Hello and welcome to Insight, everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. Thank you so much for joining us on Insight today.
I'm starting off today's episode with a conversation on women, fertility, and the choices available to those women running against the metaphoric biological clock. My guest on this issue would help us navigate the intricate web of biology clashing against societal expectations. I'd also explore the recurring political crisis in Rivers State in an attempt at defining how the interplay of resource politics, godfatherism, and just maybe some level of interference from the center perpetuates a cycle of power struggles and political upheavals in the rich or oil-rich Niger Delta state. Elizabeth?
We'll also be taking a look at Nigeria-China relations, which dates back 5 decades, and how legislative agendas can boost trade volume.
Very well then, let's kickstart the conversation.
Whatever the issues are,
the National Assembly is constitutionally empowered to scrutinize.
However complex or intricate.
We have involved all the academia, the members of the academia. We have involved the academies.
be it government policies or in fact any issue of public concern,
Our job is to help you gain clarity and make sense of it all.
This is not really healthy for our democracy.
There's a lot of aggrievance in terms of who has been in power longest and who becomes the governor of the state.
It's also in the quality of food being consumed.
After all, perception is insight.
and gaining understanding is also getting insight.
Well, I think our first conversation is apt, seeing how we're still in the month of March, which celebrates women globally. I've tagged this particular discourse, Women, Fertility and Choice, Navigating Biology and Society. This is because in a society where women's life are shaped by both biology and societal narratives, conversations around fertility, choice, and maybe autonomy remain fraught with complexity. Let me introduce my guest, Dr. Ejike Oji, an SRH expert at the Sexual and Reproductive Health. He is the chairman, Association for the Advancement of Family Planning in Nigeria. It has an acronym, AAFP. And that is just one out of the many caps he wears. He's presently wearing a red cap. He's the titled man, but that title is just one out of many that he wears in the civil society space. Dr. Oji has worked as a physician and social entrepreneur for over 3 decades, working to empower communities and safeguard the health of women. Doc, thank you so much for coming on Insight. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Nnamdi.
Doc, let me quickly begin by referencing the metaphorical biological clock that often looms large as a ticking reminder of the woman's fertility windows. Incidentally, as much as I'd like to agree, without conceding, that labels like spinster is seemingly outdated, because what we hear these days are things like single woman, single mother, maybe a married lady. But beyond all of that, what appears to remain a fact is the pressure that remains on women to conform to traditional timelines. Doc, how do these interlocking issues of medical and cultural weights impact women's mental health and life choices as far as sexual and reproductive health is concerned?
Yeah, thank you very much for this discourse. It's a very important one. Yes, it does in a way affect women a lot. And then for people who are bosses in the offices, you will know that occasionally some of your very high performing staff might just at some point derail. In a way, you'll be wondering what's going on. And then if you're not the understanding type of leader, you might punch them unnecessarily without looking at the background and attendant things that are happening. Like you mentioned, society has already labeled women based on their biological clock, the so-called biological clock, which means within the period of time they're supposed to have children. Otherwise, when they are 10 menopause, it becomes extremely difficult or impossible to have a baby, except through surrogacy. So, and that's why a lot of pressure has been put on the woman, even from the home. You will see the male child and the female child the mother will be telling the girl, won't you get married? I want to have my grandchildren. When I was your age, I was already married and started producing you people. So please go find me a good husband. The pressure is both on the man and the woman, but more on the young women. Because the young men will say, well, I'm not financially sustainable. I don't have a financially sustainable job that will make me be able to take care of my family if I get married now. So but the women is assumed that the woman should be taken care of by her husband. So that pressure is there. That's the first set of pressure that comes to the woman. And I can tell you, especially for young girls who have gone to the school, especially the universities, and they have now set their eyes to plan a career for themselves. That could be a lot of pressure and distraction for them. They will now be wondering, what should I focus my life on? Is it to get a life partner or focus on advancing my career? So, and that's why it's important that parents understand this and then find a midway. You can't just completely wish away the fact that they need to get married when they are young so that they will be able to have children when it is safe for them. Remembering that once a woman is 30 and starts having the first child, we physicians would describe that person as an elderly primate. So in other words, you're telling the person you should have gotten a baby earlier on. And then it's because of the physiologically and biological processes going on in the body. When a woman, the best time for a woman to have her child is usually between the ages of 20 and 30. That's when, even when she's carrying a pregnancy, she might not even know that she's pregnant. She can do everything. But above that is usually a challenge. For instance, when you're looking at, when you look at the 4 things you need to consider for a woman in pregnancy, we always say make sure you don't have a baby before the age of 18 because the biological processes in the body are not mature. And then, in fact, in Nigeria, 70% of deaths come from that particular age group in maternal mortality.
But we are more interested in those who are already at that age and who are having this fertility struggle and, you know, very tough, challenging journey, as it were.
Yeah.
And, you know, you already inferred, you already spoke to the issue of education, being knowledgeable enough to perhaps know some of these things. We will come to that. But I'd like to ask very quickly, you know, about lifestyle choices for women as preventative to avoiding adverse health and reproductive outcomes. Can you speak to how factors like, well, you've talked about age already, maybe speak to nutrition, speak to weight, exercise, even psychological stress, the environment. Earlier on, you talked about exposure to occupational hazards where bosses or, you know, superiors who are not understanding enough could see that their staff is sleeping and not know that, I mean, it has to do with some psychological stress arising from the struggles that she's going through. You know, how impactful or significantly impactful can a lady's lifestyle play in determining our reproductive status? Yeah.
Well, I usually like to break it down into 3 parts. One, what I call preventative, the other one promotive, and then the other one, you would say, things that kind of protect. So it's promotive, protective, and preventive. Let's start from the preventive aspects.
Okay.
One of the major lifestyles I would advise any woman who is of age is to make sure she goes for regular checkups, especially for issues like breast cancer and cervical cancer. Between now and 2030, it's been said that in Africa, 1 million women and men will die from these 3 major cancers: cancer of the prostate, cervical, and breast. And the statistics show that 25% of women who their parents had cancer, that means their mothers had cancer, they have a likelihood of having cancer of the breast. So it's important they start some preventive approaches to go for checkups to make sure they protect themselves for that. The other one is you talked about stress. Stress can come in so many ways. But you can handle stress, one, by making sure you sleep well.
Okay.
Sleep is very important. A lot of people don't understand the importance of sleep. 7 to 8 hours sleep for an adult is very, very, very essential. It's just like when you have a computer. If you want to reset your computer for optimum use, you reset the computer. That's what sleep does to both our brains and our body. So it's important that women make sure that they have proper sleep at night. And then also the way they engage with their environment. I always tell people that your mind is your frenemy. What do I mean by that? Your mind is either your friend or your enemy. And
depending on how you use it.
Oh, thank you very much. And I give you a good example. Most people who are, something like hypertension and diabetes, they are called metabolic diseases. Most often than not, the non-hereditary ones are driven by lifestyle, and that is how the mind of the person works. If anything annoys you so easily, you release adrenaline. Adrenaline will help cortisol growth in your body. So, and it can increase your hypertensive probabilities and all that. So it's important that a woman manages to keep her stress level. And let me tell you, for you to have a baby, and if you're not a single mother, that means you have to get married. If you allow stress to get a better part of you, then the so-called, should I say, probable suitors will run away. So you're being able to get somebody that you can now sit and have a baby becomes a problem. The other one is lifestyle and what you eat. You did mention food.
Nutrition.
Yes, nutrition is key. There are things that, especially during pregnancy, when you're looking for pregnancy, that helps the process of being pregnant and having a healthy baby. You must eat well. That means it has to be high in protein, and then also, of course, you must make sure you take what we call the beta distant fatty acids, which helps to increase your nutritional value. And then, of course, you must make sure that you eat leafy vegetables and all those that put a lot of antioxidants in your body. They have shown anecdotally that also helps. So lifestyle in terms of also the things you drink. A lot of women drink a lot of coffee, so to say.
Yeah.
Caffeine is also not, too much of it is not good. And of course, I don't have to overemphasize the importance of excessive alcohol use. So those things can also affect your ability to have a baby.
So now we've talked about lifestyle. Let's talk about what you referenced earlier. Education, information, and the amount of information that women out there, perhaps struggling, perhaps not struggling, have as far as fertility is concerned. I'm glad. That is why I am very happy and glad that we're doing what you're doing here today is therapeutic, as much as it is informative. So, because I'm sure it will help some women out there, navigate their reproductive journey without being constrained by stigma or misinformation. So, on the issue of information, would it be misleading to say that because a good number of women out there are not aware of their fertility timelines, that this education gap exacerbates an already bad situation, resulting in why maybe impacted women often lack, that autonomy and control over the best options that are available to them. Take egg freezing, for instance. Take IVF, for instance. Do they know these things before fertility begins to decline? Is it, how much so is this lack of education, information impacting on these women?
Yes, I'm quite excited you are bringing this up, Nnamdi. There's a lot of lack of information out there. You'll be so shocked, even amongst the so-called graduates when it comes to these issues of fertility. Most of them, now you can freeze your egg when you're young. That is in climes where that is a possibility. In Nigeria, it's still, I don't know how much I would say.
It's a work in progress. It's already there.
It's a work in progress. You can freeze your egg, and then when you're still producing eggs. And then that's where surrogacy comes in. You don't have to carry your baby so far as it's your egg, and you don't have, if you have medical problems or things that will make you not be able to carry the baby, somebody else can carry that baby, but the egg is linked to you. The other major issue in terms of information, that's why somebody like me, in my 3.5 decades of work in women's rights and women's health environments, I've noticed this very, very lack of information. As we speak, I'm building a 5 million women database. And that is to be used to make sure we get information to women and empower them in a way they can actually do things for themselves. Because if you give women information, skills, and ability, they can act very well for themselves, and it will help everybody. So it's very, very important that that information is there. There should be more clinics that will be speaking to this, outreaches, like now, assisted, like IVF, for women who do not have possibility of getting pregnant the normal way. They can use IVF. And you know, there are 2 or 3 levels. It's not everybody that will do the IVF. There are some people that might do some level of assisted, should I say, insemination. Not everybody will go to IVF level. I remember in those days, the 90s, when I was working with Dr. Wada, when he started his IVF program. There were a lot of things I told him, look, it's not everybody will come for IVF. Let us train other doctors across Nigeria to be able to take care of some of those small things people would do to get pregnant. Not everybody is so distant that will go to IVF. And he did quite a lot on that. So assisted this thing is very important. Dissemination is very, very important. And that's why I think we should go their way, so that some of our girls that are pursuing career, they should make a balance. Career is very important. That gives you the likelihood to be assertive, not assertive to make yourself obnoxious also, but assertive to know what are your rights, and then negotiate your space in a way that the other person, especially men like me, will know that you have a say. But at the same point, you must not forget that you have also a biological responsibility to yourself, to your family, and to the society. And then you have to do it in a time within the age range where you are safe, and then you do not cause problems for yourself. And then remember too, once a woman starts getting to the age of 40, there's another problem, because now we're not doing a lot of, shall I say, you know, there are some tests you might do to find out whether a child is going to be a Down syndrome child or be a sickle cell disease child. So we are not gotten there yet. So once a woman starts getting to 40 years of age, the chances of having a Mongolian child is very high. You get the point?
Yes.
So these are some of the time clock, biological clock people talk about. Not to say that majority of women will not have their normal baby, but the chance is higher.
When you're younger.
When you're younger, you have a better chance. But
You know,
when you start approaching 40,
there's something else I mean that has come to fore in the time you and I have been speaking. It's the amount of times you've mentioned we are not there yet. We're not there yet in terms of where we should be or advances elsewhere that perhaps are not here. I on my own, I tried to look up some contemporary researchers' work that explains the ongoings and expected, you know, fertility changes across time and across countries. I noticed that in advanced climes, in societies where birth control is the default option, researchers have, whether in treatment options, you know, whether in technology, they have flourished. I'm not sure, maybe I should tell you a line here. I'm not sure how, you know, I know we're making good progress, but I'm not sure how much progress we're making. Can I ask you, what is the state of fertility research today in Nigeria, and where is it going?
Well, without quoting any research, it's very, very low. The only thing I know that is quite high, not high, that has come to a state that we can say some segments of the society are having access to is IVF technology, so to speak. There are a lot of physicians or gynecologists that are offering that service right now around Nigeria. But you see, from me being a rights activist, until every woman out there, no matter how poor or rich you are, have access to that, I would say that is not here. Our country is not a country for the rich people alone.
True.
And then if you look at the percentage of women who can afford that, I can tell you it's less than 5% of our population. Mind you, if you look at the Maslow law of hierarchy of needs, 90% of Nigerians are below the physiological level. That has been shown. And if you look at the number of multidimensionally poor people in Nigeria, you can imagine. And then the women are even much more in that segment.
Yeah, impacted.
So when you talk about assisted delivery or assisted insemination and all that, it's like we have not touched it.
We've not scratched the surface.
Even the so-called well-to-do middle income, or even slightly higher than middle income, how many of them can afford paying 2 to 3 million naira for a cycle? And remind you, it's not the first cycle that might work. It might take 2 or 3 cycles.
True. And you know, earlier on you talked about working class women, career choice women who struggle in their journey as well, you know, in this, you know, and in spite of some of these advances, or no matter how much we've gone in terms of IVF treatment, you know, in Nigeria, there are still challenges. There are social, you know, inhibitions, you know, and perceptions of women. And society expectations still remain for such women, whether you're pursuing career, whether you're pursuing education or other alternative path, especially, I won't use the word Spencer again like I did, but especially as single ladies. But I think even as men, we can relate with, you know, how the hope of childbirth can create difficulties for working class women. But Doc, let me just ask you this. Are there structures, support structures within our healthcare framework that provide support for, you know, women within, you know, within this class, these working class women that can assist them manage, whether it's the medical aspect, whether it's the financial aspect, whether it's the emotional complexities of their fertility struggles, you know, or journey?
To be frank, there might be. You know, there are a lot of innovations going on in the country. Unless they come out to the open, you might not really know. There might be, but I'm not so much aware.
Okay.
But I know that some years ago, when I was the country director of IPAS, I did work. I worked with 9 women groups, and for each area, I focused on that particular women groups. Like for health, I focused on the Medical Women Association of Nigeria, and at that time, I was urging the leadership of the Women's Medical Women Association of Nigeria at that time to focus on some of these issues that you're talking about, and then do like outreaches, even go to universities and talk about some of these issues, and then also bring that point to the level of governance so that people can see the importance of that. And mind you, insurance is one thing that we're not really looking at.
Yes.
Health insurance can do quite a lot of this. If you take, for example, if you go to any of the Western nations, maybe America or the UK, most Americans cannot afford healthcare treatments or even this fertility thing that we're talking about. The only reason why it seems as everybody is able to afford it is because they use healthcare insurance. We call it resource pooling. If you go to the UK, theirs is even more advanced. It's national health insurance. So it's no matter who you are, no matter the quantile of this thing that you are, you will get some service. The only thing is that if you are extra rich, you get it faster because you might go to the private sector. But once you are in the health system, the only thing is that you queue. But if it's an emergency, you go to the emergency room.
True.
You know, so that is one area that we have not done so much. Like I said, my 5 million women database that I'm building is going to be addressing some of these issues. Because we need to take information to the women. Information is power. Information is cheaper in the long run because you give it information to take preventive approaches.
We'll be looking forward to seeing that database.
Yes, I'm going to be involving you, Nnamdi, because you have done quite so much in supporting women's. Like this program, I'm quite excited that we're doing it, and that we hope that we'll do more.
I just did the Trump step there.
Yeah.
Dr. Ejike Oji, sexual and reproductive health expert, chairman Association for the Advancement of Family Planning in Nigeria, AAFP. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on Insight. It's been a delight listening to your take on this issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Now, moving on to Rivers State, and folks to ask if perhaps Rivers isn't trapped in perpetual turmoil. The Sim-Fubara-Wike conflict may currently be in our faces, but it is far from unique, especially in the context of political crisis in the oil-rich South-South state. In fact, it is a stark reminder of the Odili Celestine Omea Amechi crisis, if you recollect that crisis. Of course, there was also the Amechi Goodluck Jonathan Wahala, and yes, the Wike Amechi episode again. Well, we'll bring all of that to bear as we discuss Rivers State and the circle of power struggles and political crisis that continue to bedevil the state. My guest is Dr. Sam Amadi, Associate Professor of Law and Director, Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Amadi. It's good to have you back on our program.
Thank you.
Fantastic, great. Dr. Amadi, I think it's best to begin with the historical continuity or continuity in the political crisis in Rivers State. Like I mentioned, the reference in my opening, we had the Odili Celestine Omeha Amechi secession crisis, which moved on to the Amechi Goodluck Jonathan tussle, and then there was the Amechi Wike struggle for control. Well, that's now culminating in the Fubara-Wike dispute, as it were. What we see clearly is a self-perpetuating circle of instability in Rivers State. Well, you are the expert there, so I think I'll leave that to you. You're in a better position to do the analysis and establish the linkages. In your considered opinion, what systemic parallels exist amongst all of the conflicts that I've referenced already, earlier, dating back to the Odili era?
Well, I think what's common to all these conflicts is the fact of succession and godfatherism, meaning that we expect there should be always succession, and oftentimes incumbents influence who emerges to succeed them. But in the case of Rivers, there have been very strong leaders who have wanted and to be godfathers in the sense of continuing to determine outcome through their successors. And the governor of Rivers State is unique in many ways because he has access to resources that other governors may not have. The geopolitical importance of Rivers State is very clear. And so all those who have been governors in Rivers State have kind of seriously have become serious contenders. And so that carries with it the risk or the tendency to try to be larger after being governor because he would want to be president. I mean, Odili almost became president. Was coasting home until the Obasanjo, incident and Nuribadu's allegation of corruption and all that, and he was stepped down for Yaradua. Amechi himself, very powerful, in a way, contributed majorly to the collapse of PDP when he pulled away and joined Buhari and others to form the APC and to continue that struggle. And Wike almost becoming president, in 2022 and 2023, and somewhat contributing to the failure of PDP in the 2023 election. So the governor of Rivers State is special because he has access to resources, geopolitics influence, oversized influence. And that has created the crisis that we're seeing today because you are so powerful, you bring a nobody to, so to say, quote unquote, to the throne, and you hope to continue to exercise that power and continue to have the access to those resources for future political undertakings. And that's what is behind the crisis. And so that's a common theme of this crisis that we've seen over the years.
So let me attempt to outline the causative factors that you've outlined that underpin this circle of political crisis playing out in Rivers State. Maybe since 2007, okay, we'll take it back, maybe even before then, in 2003. One, Rivers oil wealth, well, some have described that as rivers resource cost paradox. 2, you talked about godfatherism. Let me add, you know, I didn't hear you particularly talk about, but maybe you inferred that somewhat, and that's the federal state power struggles arising from partisan rivalry. And then there's what some have described as the erosion of term-limited governance. Yet again, describing that as being demonstrated by what they say is institutional manipulation. So, Doc, considering that these are all deeply rooted systemic issues, can one therefore say that Rivers State, as it is right now, has made significant progress in spite of the reoccurring pattern of crisis? And I mean development-wise. And, you know, while you're just responding to that, can you also speak to the issue of can progress be ascribed as development in the real sense, especially when juxtaposed against the distortion of democratic ideals and democratic progress in a state, or indeed even in Nigeria?
Well, first, I think it's clearly Rivers has not made much progress development-wise. I mean, each of these governors have constructed infrastructure, bridges. Wike did a lot of them. I think Amechi did also, Odile also. But again, if you look at the Human Development Index, Rivers is not doing very well. Look at education, healthcare, even urban renewal. And so even now, some of the rural communities don't have a very good road. So you can, Port Harcourt may have a lot of these big infrastructure projects, but again, they do not add much to improved GDP outside oil and oil companies, you know. But in terms of expansion in commercial activities, industrial development, an inverse relationship between Rivers State's geopolitical importance and this development. Again, when we talk about democracy and governance index,
yes,
these conflicts have created democracy deficits in those states in terms of state capture leading to personalized institutions, lack of accountability, erosion of social capital. People are behaving a small militancy, you know, corruption, and you see threats and violence. I mean, under Amechi, we saw destruction of the House of Assembly. Now we've seen also instance of violence against public institutions, instance of maximalist politics and extremist politics. So there's a deficit in democracy and good governance. There's a deficit in human and social development.
Let me just go straight, Doc, and talk about, since you've already talked about democratic accountability, and you somewhat hinted at the subversion of federalism. But
Hello?
I want to ask you, beyond the courts and the law, you know, might a political solution still suffice at this point in resolving the Fubara Assembly members, well, let me include Wike crisis? Do you think that is possible considering where we are at the moment?
I think that's the only real solution. It's a political problem that became legal problem. Like the great American French philosopher Alexis Tocqueville, who went to US and looked at the American democracy, says in America, no sooner had a political crisis developed than it becomes a legal crisis. So in the US, a political crisis, there's too much legalization or legalism. People are litigating. So political crises are often taken to the court. This is a political crisis. And the real solution is political. Yes, the court has complicated it because the judgment of the Supreme Court has created a legalistic solution which requires a lot of social political grounding to deliver. So court says, do ABC, of course, but there are many contexts from which ABC can emerge, but the court's decision will not address this context. So what we see today now is you have a legal victory, but that legal victory requires some other political action to make it happen. And those political actions are not covered in the law, in the decision of the court. So I think that the real solution is political, which is that the two actors, protagonists, Fubara and of course the legislators via Wiki, agree to accommodate each other. So the legislature says, you know what, the governor can stay as governor. We're not going to impeach the governor. And the governor says, you know what, the legislators can stay and I will obey their lawmaking, expression of lawmaking power. And that's a settlement. Of course, we know that they're not all happy. They wait for 2027 to fight again on who gets dislodged, who wins the power. But they can do what you call modus vivendi, which is live, let's live. It's not a case of, it's not a principled settlement that they have agreed. It's transactional. That there is a mutual assured destruction. And for us, the win-win will be the governor remains, we remain, and then we wait to fight at the polls again to get the governor out, or the governor gets us out. I think that's the only thing. So if there's a common sense compromise to say there's no possibility of vanquishing anyone here. So it's not that Fubara must submit or Wike must submit. It can't vanquish anyone, but we can construct a safe base to fight again. Okay, we accommodate him as a governor. We're not going to try to impeach him, and the governor says the 21 persons they remain as legislators. So then we're not happy with ourselves, but we just have to, continue what they call the Catholic marriage, indissoluble. But doesn't necessarily mean we're happy.
I see the analogy you've used there, Dr. Amadi. It's quite unfortunate that our connection is this poor. I would like to apologize to our viewers for the poor connectivity. Hopefully one of these days we'll be able to bring Dr. Amadi into the studio. Doc, it appears you are avoiding our studio. Please
No.
forgive us our trespasses and come into the studio. So we can have you.
Good network, but today was bad, so I apologize.
Today is bad. But just before I let you go, Dr. Amadi, I imagine that Rivers State is not in isolation in terms of crisis, as seen in other parts of the country. Other states, that is, consider big prizes crucial in national election outcomes. I see what the pundits are doing already. They're already dotting the lines, and establishing, the linkages between events in Rivers to the Lagos Assembly Wahala, and then linking it to the Kanu Emirate Torso, and even the Kaduna El Rufai issue. Is it normal, politically speaking now, Dr. Mahdi, to already have gotten to this level or point of politicking? 2 years into a new administration, 2 years before fresh national elections, is this in any way suggestive of systemic flaws in Nigeria's federal democratic framework?
Yeah, it is. Two things. Politics about conflicts that are managed conflict. That's politics, the management of conflict. So you expect that run up to election, even the US, just now, there are protective Democrats nominees or people who are pretending to be running for 20, whatever, after Trump, 2030 or something or so, Trump presidency. So, but that's how it is. So, but the difference is that there are more organized structure for those engagements, for those conflicts. There is institutional moderation that are strong, whereas parties, legal systems. The problem with Nigeria is that our institutions are terribly weak, personalized, they're functional, thinly regulated by norms. So there's a thin regulation. So take, for example, the PDP. The crisis over 2027 is what is driving the party apart. It's not a problem, but if you have rule-based procedure, those winners and losers will emerge in a fair manner. So the system will not wobble because the system would, so there'll be front runners, there'll be, back runners. And all these people will be determined by a procedure that people know. People know who is popular, who is not popular. Circumstances may even make you unpopular. So you have a divorce, you have a scandal, you accept your outcome. Like I've said in Rivers, the problem is that nobody accepts outcome. So if you're a godfather and you put in a godson and he turns coat, becomes, disloyal, accept your losses. Nobody accepts losses in Nigeria. And in a rule-based society, you accept losses. Just like
Dr. Mahdi, I hear you and I hear you loud. But even though we've struggled a bit there to hear you for some time, but just towards the end there, we started hearing you clearly. I'd like to again apologize to our viewer for the quality of the connection. It can only get better. I'm pretty sure when next we have Dr. Amadi, the signal would be a lot better. Or better still, we would have him in the studio in person, and then we'd have a robust, smooth conversation. Dr. Sam Amadi, Associate Professor of Law and Director, Abuja School of Social and Political Thoughts, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on our program. It's been a delight listening to your take, your insight on this subject matter. Thank you so much indeed for coming on Insight.
Thank you so much.
Elizabeth Omori is up next. She will be talking about the Nigerian-China relations, but from a unique perspective, I should say. She will be talking about legislative diplomacy. Elizabeth Omori comes up next.
The bilateral relations between Nigeria and China dates back 1971. This bond has expanded growing bilateral trade and strategic cooperation. China is also one of Nigeria's important trading and export partners. Nigeria and China have signed a number of agreements on trade, economic, scientific, and technological cooperation as well. These agreements also involve investment protection. Now, strengthening a robust parliamentary relationship is our focus on this segment. And Kule Yusuf, Executive Vice Chairman, Merited Negotiation Consulting Firm, who doubles as one of the consultants at the National Assembly on Nigeria-China Relations Committee, will speak to us. Thank you so much, Mr. Kule, for joining us on Insights.
Thank you so much for having me, and good afternoon, viewers.
Thank you very much. Now, how would you describe the more than 4 decades relationship between Nigeria and China?
As you may be aware, the first bilateral relationship between Nigeria and China is stated to be February 10, 1971, and from that time to date, Nigeria-China bilateral relationship has been so robust, and it's one of the key factor area that is giving us an overview international bilateral relationship globally.
We got the hint that Nigeria and China are interested in strengthening parliamentary relations. Could you share with us what this entails?
Well, the National Assembly structure, especially the committee, you will realize that this is the first time the National Assembly, especially in the Federal House of Representatives, will have a committee focused on Nigeria-China relation. And the Speaker of Federal House of Representatives inaugurated the committee, and the committee is being chaired by Honorable Jafar Yakubu. And having done that, the committee invited some of the consultants to come and drive the process, to strengthen the administrative and strategic collaboration, to drive the process with them in the area of partnership and collaboration to ensure that the delivery, the committee is well structured and enhance the bilateral relationship between Nigeria and China. And on the 30th of this January this year, 2025, the committee inaugurated technical working group along with the consultants to organize a summit towards legislative agenda for ease of doing business in Nigeria.
You talked about this move aiding legislative agenda. Could you be more specific?
Well, the bilateral agreement that was signed by the president, our president, Senator Ahmed Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the GCFR, with the president of China last year, you will see that the agreement is very inclusive, and there's a need for legislative, from legislative point of view, to also come up with a bill that will promote ease of doing business, strengthen the institutional linkages, and partnership coordination. And this is why the National Assembly is proposing this summit, in order for the country as a whole to have a law that will back the investor and investment for ease of doing business in Nigeria.
Okay, I would like to ask you this because, you know, oftentimes when we talk about legislative agendas and all that, a Nigerian, a businessman in Nigeria would like to know, how would this translate to him or her making money, benefiting? So let's link it to the Nigerian environment. How will this partnership or agreement to be signed or legislative agenda aid the growth of Nigerian businesses? Because China, as we speak, has about 6,000 companies in Nigeria.
By record, like as you have mentioned earlier, we have over 6,000 various companies that has been registered by CA's Corporate Affairs Commission since 1971, out of which 3,420 is inactive, and less than 1,500 are active, but 842 are operational. Now, this summit is focusing on, it has an agenda, and it's focusing on, first of all, to identify those Chinese companies in Nigeria, what sector are they operating, what are their challenges, and propose a solution that eventually becoming part of our report that will be submitted to the National Assembly for enactment of law for ease of doing business in Nigeria. That's number one. We'll also give an access to a global partnership funding network support system. And this is what will lead to foreign investment fund. And number three, this will also strengthen the institutional linkages and partnership coordination, targeting a system that will transit Nigeria bilateral relationship from trade volume to development-driven cooperation. We want to see how best we can transit agribusiness sector into agribusiness, so a lot of youth will participate in agribusiness instead of agriculture. And again, communication and IC. In the recent time, AI is a global trend. How can we also metaphors into a system that will promote artificial intelligence in our dealings? And of course, mining and mineral resources, education, health sector, and a small-scale industry. These are components that congregate the agreement that the President of Nigeria and China signed last year. But this summit will just give a lead way into what I've just mentioned earlier, in order for legislative to come up with a bill for ease of doing business. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, January 31st this year, technical working group was inaugurated in National Assembly, and these are line MDAs that have mandates in dealing with the Chinese company and those Nigeria who are interested in doing business with China to enhance Nigeria-China bilateral relationship.
Okay. At this point, I would like to speak for entrepreneurs, those into importation and exports. How will this be beneficial for the Nigerian markets and business persons?
Thank you so much for your question. Now, how would this affect the establishment positively? Some of our institutions, also the government MDAs and the establishment, also needs to improve on their act and their constitution that established them. For example, if you look at the volume, the trade volume this year, last year, between China and Nigeria, is almost 23.9 billion trade volume. And if you look at it, China on importation is doing about 21.3, and Nigeria is doing less than 3 billion. And why would it happen? The summit will give us an opportunity to look into what can we also do to ensure that the export from Nigeria to China is being improved appropriately. For example, most of our agri products from Nigeria to China, there's high tariff rate. So we look into it appropriately and see how Nigeria business community will also benefit. This will now give us an enabling environment to come up with a robust report that will be driven by logic, science, and data in order to become a document that will be, a bill that will be presented on the floor of the House that will eventually become law. And the role that the Director General Presidential Heads of Business is doing, what is their responsibility in this whole arrangement is you cannot underrate it. The involvement of National Investment Promotion Commission, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and all other agencies, most especially the active institutional collaboration we are getting from NUPRC is also very impressive. So a report that will be submitted to the National Assembly will eventually become a law for ease of doing business. As you may be aware, National Assembly is to make law. The implementation of the policy is purely the executive responsibility, and those line agencies that will execute the implementation of the policy are already working with us. You may agree with me, the appointment of Director General of Nigerian-China Strategic Partnership and Global Alliance, Dr. Tigbe, has been a plus to ensure that our bilateral relationship is translating from trade volume to developmental-driven cooperation.
Okay, quickly before I let you go, you talked about trade volume. When you quoted the numbers in billions, the gap is quite much when you talk about the number of businesses or volume of trade involved. Can Nigeria match this volume?
Looking at our GDP and our population, Brazil tried it. It's working in Brazil. If you look at the trade volume and developmental collaboration and cooperation in Brazil, and what is going on, it's almost 52-48 in Brazil. So I'm pretty sure when all the instrument is being geared towards strengthening the institutional linkages, definitely the partnership cooperation will definitely enhance our trade volume. For example, what are the reasons? Why are we having challenges on exporting our agri produce? What is our inter and intra-regional and international interference relationship on artificial intelligence and diplomacy? So this summit will give us this opportunity to have access to global partnership network support system, which will definitely enhance and increase the foreign investment fund. This is part of what will definitely enhance the bilateral trade between Nigeria and China.
All right, Kunle Yusuf, Executive Vice Chairman, Merited Negotiation Consulting Firm. We want to thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you, and we're always ready to be here to give our home point of view for Nigeria to understand. It is high time to move the bilateral relationship between Nigeria and China from trade volume to developmental trade-driven cooperation. Thank you once again. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
And my last word on this episode will be on the conversation on women and fertility. It is a collective call to action in demystifying reproductive health. I believe that by sharing resources, challenging stereotypes, and advocating for inclusive policies, things can be better or can only get better for women struggling in their fertility journeys. And if you're reflecting on your own journey, consult a specialist early, explore your options, and remember, your worth is not defined by timelines or titles. That's it. Do join us same time next week for more on Insights. My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.